Welcome, good afternoon to today's session in our innovation community from Thinkly. And today we look at what is human-centered innovation, continuity of our earlier session on design thinking. And today we delve on is design thinking and human-centered innovation uh, completely oriented towards solving all kind of problems? Where does it really work or not work in some way? So we are trying to really figure this out, and we will also look at as we move towards the innovation piece. What is the future of design thinking? Where are we really going, and what are the areas that we could really move? And where is design thinking really taking us? What next? So these are two areas that we will deal with. Like always, I will share a couple of slides. We look at first 10 minutes, 15 minutes to some slides to provoke ourselves. And please do enter your comments on the chat window as we go through. And the second part of the session, I will then deal with some of the questions. We'll look at some questions and I'll try and address to the best of my knowledge. We'll try and address. So I'll share my screen now and let us have a look at a quick recap. And also we look at what's next in terms of design thinking and the human-centered design. So what we are seeing here is, can human-centered design solve everything? Does it? And what's the future of design thinking? We try and really figure this out. Coming to you from Thinkly Innovation Community. Um, and so so my name is David Perez Isaac, a co-founder, lead facilitator from Iris Innovate. Come with around 30 years of work experience in design thinking, innovation, certified from some multinational institutes, and been practicing innovation, creativity, and others for quite some time now. So, a quick recap from where we really started in some way. We said, what is design thinking? And one of the proponents and practitioners of design thinking, Tim Brown, very aptly mentions that design thinking is a human centered approach, focused on the stakeholder, focused on the needs, pains, and gains of the stakeholder, of the customer, and so that is the prime focus. And it also integrates the needs of people and possibilities of technology and requirements of business solutions. So we have these three entities which really have to come together. And that's how we are able to think of design thinking more as a holistic sense. So it's a unique way of innovating from a human centeredness. And we had seen these three circles, zones, where we can innovate technology. We can have technological innovations where you see a lot of innovations happening today. We'll see from business model innovation, new ways of engaging with your customers, stakeholders, and and usability and design front. So design thinking primarily enters from the usability and design front. It looks at what is the need, what are the pains and gains, what is that area that I need to innovate, and then fits in the technology and business elements put together. And that interface that you really see is essentially where innovation lies. This interface here, right at the center, you will see that here is the zone where you would find a lot of practical innovations coming in. So this is a quick recap. And we saw that, yes, for us to attain this zone of innovation, where we see innovation happening, there is a method. And of course, there are different methods. And for us to practice and for us to implement, we need to have some structural sense. And here is a 4D approach from UK Design Council. Discover, define. So you discover the challenge area from the user's perspective. You define the particular challenge from a human centered challenge. So you convert a business problem into a human centered challenge. And then you develop and deliver. So develop, so you discover. So you can start from any business challenge. If you look at, say, I want to improve customer experience or I want to have more sales. so which is a business challenge. But sales isn't possible unless you engage with your customers better, say online or on social media or whichever channel that you are utilizing. And therefore, the whole human centered element is what is that particular need that the target group has that I need to meet using the social challenge, various multiple challenges which are there. And that enables me to provide value. So it isn't just got to do with sales, it's got to do with the people behind it, whom do we really target? And that's of essence. And similarly, you move to develop, deliver, where you create a lot of prototypes, solutions. There is no silver bullet. You have to iterate very fast. And wherein design thinking has this philosophy of fail fast or iterate at very high pace, this becomes a very important aspect of design thinking. And deliver, of course, you try and implement some of these pieces up and validate some of them, and ultimately you come to a business outcome. So you see this kind of a transitioning really happens, and you see a double diamond where things are diverging and converging in a way. So this is a quick recap of where we were looking at in our earlier session, where we saw design thinking and its prime precepts. We move forward and really see that how has human-centered design been applied successfully. Of course, there are failures also, and for various reasons, and that's how we really keep on refining, and that's how the science has evolved. But let us look at some of the examples where design thinking is very successful. Some examples where organizations have applied design thinking, created new business models, and really, focused and been obsessed with the end user in large number of ways. So one of them is Uber Eats. They redefined the food delivery entire channel itself. And here, what you would see is that they looked at a lot of research on the various customer delivery partners, restaurant staff members, to really figure out what is that entity and what are those pain points that the current business model is having. And they came up with some items like most popular item category that you can put forward. And of course, they evolve. It's not that everything is very static. It keeps on evolving dramatically as we move forward. Some of the others here you have Braun, Oral-B, electric toothbrush, where you could, if you look at the design, particularly of the product, a large handle for easy grip. You can have it charged on your laptop. You can have the tip of the brush being changed periodically. And all of these design features coming from a lot of insights and understanding about what are the current challenges people have, and try and address. Not that everything is refined and everything is ideal, but the whole objective of design thinking is to iterate and keep on addressing new challenges as they emerge and the new needs as they emerge at the price point and for the target group that we are handling. And that's the key. That's the key. You see another here, a very famous example here, Airbnb. At one moment of time was grappling with acquiring customers right at the very beginning when they started. And they were about to leave this entire enterprise itself because it was not making sense and revenue at all. And what they did is they said, let us do a last ditch effort and let us figure out what's really happening. And that's when they started visiting the field, looking at stuff up, looking at what people were posting on their sites. And one of the pieces that they recognized is that the image quality was very important. The resolution of photos was very important. And if people who have properties to let out on Airbnb, they take their photographs, it may not be very professional. And if it's dull, then people don't get attracted to it. And they experimented with some of these features and got some professionals to get them photographs done and saw the impact. And that's been the whole DNA of Airbnb. In fact, any new joinee to the organization has initially 2 weeks off where they can just go into visit the locations, look at the website, look at the app, look at the features, figure out changes, modifications that need to be done, and they take this very seriously in a way. And that's been the success story and mantra for a long period of time. Another example here from the pharma space here, PillPack, online pharmacy entity acquired by Amazon. What they realized is people find it so very difficult to, patients who are on medicines, diabetes and heart patients and some of the other very chronic illnesses, and especially with elderly folks also, you will find that it's so very difficult for people to manage the dosage and to figure out which medicine to take and what frequency, especially if you imagine the strips of medicine being so very small, sometimes the dosage is very small, very difficult to peel it off and really track all of this. And it's a huge task for them and a huge hassle for them. And they came up with this whole model of prescription based home delivery systems where you could have medicines delivered based on the dosage and it's already pre-packed in certain ways, so that the design enables quick consumption. You don't miss out on your dosage. It's quite easy. Of course, it has a price tag to it, and that's what the whole business model is. But then you find that you would want to eliminate certain kind of challenges that people are really facing. And so these are some quick examples on applications of design thinking, human-centered design, and some of the successful ones. Of course, there are failures also. And as we look at in some of our other sessions that we will keep on planning, we look at some failures also and what are the learnings that really come from them. So let me have a look at some of the questions. Maybe we'll address some of the questions before we proceed forward. So we have Shantanu Jadhav asking here, how can human-centered innovation address complex societal challenges? It's a very good question, Shantanu. Design thinking has been applied by sociologists and governments and others to solve a lot of business challenges also. In fact, there are countries in Europe who has a separate department who use design thinking very specifically for human-centered challenges, especially for government, processes and redesigning them and trying to really figure them out. So they have been using design thinking for colleges for changing the curriculum, the way that we engage in hospitals for certain large number of hospitals where patient care is important. You look at societal challenges like transportation, like you may look at the sustainability elements. There are a large number of endeavors and workouts and sprints which many organizations conduct to gain a lot of inputs and a lot of ideas and actions where you could really take very impactful actions in large number. In fact, design thinking is used by NGOs also, NGOs and schools. So I work with some NGO schools where design thinking is taught to students so that the curriculum changes. Yeah, and say for example, when we look at NGOs and we provide, some food and other pieces, the whole idea is people should not be dependent on the agency. How do we get the people to be self-reliant in a way? And these are the kinds of problems which are very apt for design thinking, which they call as wicked challenges. Wicked challenges are those challenges where we don't have solutions immediately identified. It was never a problem earlier. And therefore, what the ways of thinking have to really change. And for these kind of wicked challenges, especially for societal complex challenges, design thinking is very apt. It may be successful to various degrees in which we explore and implement, but definitely it has large number of applications where people are utilizing this to a large extent, right? I hope Shantanu have addressed some part of it, but there are huge kind of, and maybe in some of my posts I will also trigger this off, some readings and some other elements on societal challenges, how design thinking was really used. Varun Nanda here, can you share examples where human-centered design transformed a problem-solving approach? Varun, again, good question here. See, problem-solving approaches are multiple, and design thinking is one unique way of trying to solve the problems, right? I can solve the problems in a traditional manner by doing root cause analysis and trying to, figure out where the issues are and validate statistically and address them. This is one way of solving the problem. Sometimes I go to the expert and the expert can give a solution and I solve the problem. Design thinking, is very useful when you are trying to find innovative solutions in large number of ways. So I'll give you an example here. I was working with one of the organizations and they were trying to transform, they were trying to really address that my sales of my watches, which are there, are going lower periodically. So their whole business challenge was how do I increase the sales of watches? What are the features that I need to build within the watch so that sales rise in large number of ways? So if I look at it like a problem, a typical problem of sales, you would naturally get into the analysis of where is the sales highest, which models of my watches are fast selling, slow selling, are my which of the models are having a high pickup rate, and which of my sales promotions are taken very beautifully in terms of the reach. What is my conversion rate? So you would typically do that. Of course, they are effective, not that they aren't. They are needed in large number of ways. But then if the question is that how do I now relook at the watch so that I am able to capture a new market or revolutionize the way that the watch is seen and then address this. Design thinking came in very handy because then the way that they looked at is I'm not looking at it like a sales problem now. I am looking at it for people who are traditional buyers of watches and what is the value that the watch has for them and what problem does the watch solve for them. Okay, so you may say that the watch solves the problem of time, but then obviously next question is I have the mobile phone which gives me the time. And why do I need a watch for having to do that? And then you start discovering that maybe it's got not only the time, it has got the value of position, about the brand and other pieces. And so when you start looking at that and then realize that, oh, you have an opportunity for you to amalgamate different solutions inside. And what design thinking in this element gave you is, can I combine the features of a credit card into the watch? Can I can what are the other features of watch that can come inside? So you would obviously see that health elements, health monitoring systems are in the watch. The communication systems have gone into the watch. The financial transactions have got into the watch. So a lot of these features, and that's how they really redesigned it. But if I looked at it very traditionally from a problem-solving sales perspective, you would have gone into the traditional solutions that you would really come with, right? Yeah. So hope Lavanya, I give you a quick example on this is a real example on one of the organizations who was trying to relook at how do you build in, and of course human centeredness gives a lot of insights in ways of what people do. One very interesting element and slightly digressing is uh, when we say about equality and gender equality. Um, if I have to increase gender equality, and I'm trying to solve that problem, what do I really do? What are the ideas that come to your mind? I may I may try and promote it. I will try and indicate that, here are certain key figures who are doing extremely well in the professional element. I may celebrate Women's Day. I may invite speakers and now, this was in one of the workouts that I was doing with somebody who was very keenly in a large organization looking at gender equality. And her concern was that even after doing all of this, the gender equality ratio was still not to the mark on what we wanted. And the whole question was that for whom are we trying to solve the problem? Uh, and what's the perception that they have? And what really came out is one of the aspects that really came out from the design thinking when we look at the human centered perspective is, why do we essentially celebrate Women's Day in the very first place? Is it that we spend one day out of 365 days where we recognize this? What about the remaining 364 days? Are we absolved of our responsibility on the other days as we do that, since we do this activity? And that questioning starts, and then at a certain moment you may realize that the traditional ways of looking at stuff may be very attractive, but it really doesn't solve the problem, because you haven't made people capable or got them onto the decision board or equipped them with skills and mentored them in the right way, which is necessary and not a one-time event. It's a continuous mentoring event that is necessary for you to take them to the higher level, right? So design thinking is sometimes very perilous also. It's painful, right? But it does give you a lot of insights. Yeah. Right, great. So we'll take one more before we go ahead, and we have Lakshmi Ranjan. Can human-centered innovation truly address all types of challenges, or are there limitations to its effectiveness? Yes, great question, and that brings us to the next section of our presentation. We'll exactly answer this, Lakshmi, for you. The next question is design thinking apt for all kind of challenges? Where does it? What are the limitations? Where all we can't apply design thinking? And what is really necessary. So let me share my screen, and we should get some slides up here. Okay, so what design thinking is not a substitute for, it's not a substitute, so you can't substitute it for various items. It's not a substitute. It's not a substitute for any research and development work. So if you're doing pure research, discovery, drug discovery, you are doing, robotics, you are doing research in AI, and any kind of pure researches or research in technology, research and development, truly design thinking is not so very effective there. Primarily, it could be effective. So you'll see that it's not effective there primarily because it looks at the method of how you, and if the method is very sacrosanct and it's developed and it's refined, then there is hardly any scope for you to really move up, because you have guidelines for doing certain pieces of. Imagine you're doing research and development nuclear sciences. You just can't go and experiment and ask the what if, because you have certain guidelines and other pieces to follow. But the thinking and the questioning, it would definitely help, but it's not a substitute for research and development. Similarly, if you look at strategy design, organizations want to create a strategy, where to play, how to win. I want to create key initiatives, put measures on it. A design thinking, in my opinion, is not so very effective here, because you have a lot of other techniques like balanced scorecard, Porter's model on strategy formulation. There are so many different ways, blue ocean strategy kind of elements, for you to frame your strategy. And strategy in terms of numbers, strategy in terms of metrics, directions to take, market entry, new product. You're strategizing at an org level, and even for that matter, if you're doing budgeting kind of exercise, design thinking not so very apt when you do budgeting and these kind of pieces, right? Um, Also technical design, engineering design. So you want to create a uh, you know construct a bridge, and you have formulas for that. And structural stability is very essential. So you can't really go ahead and start. Of course, the overall design and all is something that you would really question, but then you need to have a very strong presence onto the technical side and the engineering side for you to leverage the aesthetical part of stuff. But it's not a substitute for technical design, engineering design, things like forecasting, manpower planning, allocating of resources, supply chain management. You'll see a lot of these, mathematical models help you do that. very, very aggressively. For that matter, manufacturing plant, allocation, staff allocation. Um, who will go on leave, and how do you do workload balancing when staff is on leave in other places? Very difficult for you to use design thinking. Not very apt. Okay. Of course, not very apt in emergency actions also, because you don't have the liberty of time for you to really work with it in large number of ways. And you already have certain known actions that you would really take and work with in some way. So you will find that um, emergency actions were needed, design thinking not very apt in large number of ways, right? Yeah. So these are some areas where design thinking is not very apt. Having said that, it's not that you can't apply design. Design thinking can be applied in strategy, for example, for scenario generation. How do I create the future scenarios? What do I anticipate? Design thinking can be used to look at possibilities in research. Are there other areas for exploration which I need to figure out? So you could use design thinking for that. But nonetheless, you need to have a very strong presence in the core sciences for you to leverage design thinking. It's not a substitute or a silver bullet, if I may say so, for a large number of areas. Hmm? Okay, so time for some questions, and let me see some questions. Okay, so we had Gayatri asking question here. How does empathy play a critical role in the success of the human-centered innovation? Empathy is very important in human-centered innovation. Um, and I would say it's the core DNA of human-centered innovation, because how do you innovate without uh, understanding the empathizing? And like we said, empathizing, if I in simple words, is putting ourselves in somebody else's shoe. Of course, for a base understanding, it's true. But in design thinking, you have various techniques like empathy map, journey maps. You can do ethnographic research for you to really empathize with the stakeholders, right? And what empathy does, it gets you to understand what's the core issue which people are facing, right? One of the areas, a quick area, and there are examples that are quite a lot in the pieces of like we looked at the packaging of medicine, thing. Now how else would you ever come to know that there is a market that is there for people to have packaged medicine in some form, unless you empathize, unless you go and see stuff up. And then you realize, my God, means people are really spending a lot of time removing the medicine. Sometimes I have to break the medicine into half, and sometimes it falls down and I can't locate it. And then I start getting the empathy in terms of what pain they are having. I may have designed it beautifully, but I really don't know what really happens. And there are examples galore. I was working for a refrigeration manufacturing industry earlier, and we used to do this kind of empathy visits to the customers, people whose refrigerator was not working or not cooling in a way. And you would realize, and you would have beautiful R&D done, beautiful design, beautiful aesthetics. But when you come in and into the customer's home and then realize that how does an Indian customer use a refrigerator? And you would then see, people use refrigerator for cooling water. Yeah, and water is very high in terms of load, so refrigerator sometimes becomes a device for only just cooling water, and it fails in such. But then it's how the refrigerator has to be designed. So you understand what are the pains that the end consumer. Similarly, a lot of entities on examples galore, like GE when they developed MRI machine. They were so very happy that it's sort of a beautiful machine that I have developed and very useful to human elements, human people, and the society at large. But when they visited the hospital themselves and they realized that children were so fearful of this, it was generating fear, and the sound was so humongous and generating fear. And suddenly you have empathy, and inside I created a monster for children. It's useful, but it does not meet the need of a certain segment. It did not address an emotional element. And that's where you get this kind of empathy. Very important, because then you design systems which are better. Very useful in packaging also. And I suppose you will realize that many of the packaging items which are packaged today, it becomes a wrestling match between you and the package. For you to open it in some way. Now, somebody has to, the packaging is meant to protect food, but never people are looking at the fact that how easy it should be. It should not only protect food, but also enable ease of opening of the package in immediate ways. Right. And many number of ways you can open the wafer packet like this and just splits open, all wafers are on the ground. And the kind of pain that you have when you do that, especially if it's children, and you don't empathize with it. So empathy becomes very core to innovation in large number of ways, right? Right. Anand is asking here, how can technology be levers to support and enhance human-centered innovation? See, technology is a very key enabler for human-centered innovation. You would look at prototyping. In prototyping, when you create designs, there are a lot of technological softwares which enable you to create prototypes in high speed. Okay, especially if it's a physical product, you may have some machines which create products in say 15 minutes. You can have the entire design in 15 minutes. Uh, and you can actually test it physically also. So you have a lot of technology, you have a lot of simulation methods that can be done. Automobile manufacturers, when they design a lot of stuff, use a lot of automated softwares where you don't even create a physical model. It's just on the software, and you are able to understand how the pressures and how the vehicle would perform in a certain condition. So very aggressively used during prototyping part. With AI evolving, also a lot of enablement in terms of probable designs which emerge. It has enabled people to accelerate their creativity levels in large number of ways. In terms of gaining empathy, with a lot of social media and lot of capturing of information on digital space, it becomes very easy to understand patterns of behavior. So for example, somebody is buying, say take Amazon, and I want to, the volumes are huge, and how do I now try and figure out what's the ideal way? How do I design systems so that it becomes easier for people? Similarly, when people go shopping, I can have cameras. I have cameras. I have tags. I have got RFID codes. I know exactly what's really happening, and that helps me to really gain a lot of insights in terms of consumer behavior. So a lot of technology being used in discovery as well as prototyping and others. But again, it's not a substitute for empathy, because empathy, remember, is a human attribute. And therefore, you will have to use technology to gain insights on what are those expectations, what are the jobs to be done by the consumer, what are they wanting to do. And that's the core for you to develop. So it may not be a highly complex design which is technologically enabled, but simple designs which solve problems beautifully in large number of ways. Right. Okay, great. Some good questions coming up. So we have another one on Jenny Matthew asking, in what ways does prioritizing human needs lead to more impactful innovations? Prioritizing human needs, yeah. So I think we addressed the prioritizing of the human needs. So of course, human needs per se are many, right? And what empathy does, it helps you to really understand what are those critical ones. Uh, and here's the beauty of it is, in design thinking, you just don't go and keep on asking consumers or your end stakeholder in terms of what do you expect. Okay, because the prime premise is the end consumer and the stakeholder has a certain problem to solve, has a certain job to be done. Okay. Not that, and 90% of your customers and stakeholders aren't in a position to even articulate their need and which they have. So, and that's what Apple did also. So what they did is and you see top organizations who create a lot of beautiful products and services don't go and just go and ask the consumer in terms of what do you want. What they do is they infer the need or the jobs to be done through detailed understanding and empathizing and understanding what are the areas and what tasks people are finding it difficult to do. Okay. That enables them to come up with solution designs on services, on products, on systems, and right. And so it's not just got to do with just going and asking people what. So, say for example, I know of a company which is a Swiss company which specializes in kitchen equipment and household equipments, especially vessels and some which you use in your kitchen for people who are elderly or people who have got arthritis problem and other problems. Now, if you would have gone to the consumer and asked that what are the challenges you feel when you are in the kitchen and what helps you. Nobody would have said that they will say that I find it very difficult to handle stuff. But nobody will come and say, give me a equipment or which has got a thicker handle for me to hold very easily, or which is flexible than compared to the others. Because normal, if you look at a scraper or the knife, it has a very small handle. For people who have arthritis, they can't hold it also. Elderly people can't hold it in the right way. So if you go and ask the elderly, what do you want? They will not come and say, I want to have a larger handle. Now it is you who has to go and figure out and observe through empathy that what are the challenges they are facing, what's the job to be done, and therefore what do I do? And the whole organization, the company which is one of the largest in that space, specializes in design of equipments for home, for elderly, for people with this disability. And you'll see the design which has got larger handles, smaller entity, very convenient for people. And regular people buy that because it's so convenient. It's so easy for them to handle. It's not only for people, elderly people, it's for people like you and me. It becomes so very easy. But the whole issue is you just can't go to the consumer and ask, what do you want? So, for example, somebody comes and asks, you have got a mobile phone. What is it that features that you want in the mobile phone? I don't know. I used it. You may say, give me a camera which is of a higher resolution, but that's not what exactly you want. But it's for the innovator to really figure out, and that's what people really spend a lot of effort. Okay, Ashwin Jadeja asking here, are there situations where human-centered innovation might face limiting factors? Yes, human-centered approach has its own limitations, like we spoke of engineering challenges, strategy, some of the other challenges where very difficult. Sometimes, you may not have direct connect with the stakeholder because then you need to have a pseudo measure of what the stakeholder wants. Like, you can't directly speak to the person. Uh, so technically, say in the software development, I want to figure out certain features that I want to build. I cannot directly connect to the end consumer because you can't reach out to them. So you may have to have a program manager who then articulates the need and understands the need. So in such kind of features, there will be limiting factors that really happen in this. And of course, some areas, as we spoke of, not very apt for design thinking. Rajesh asking here, do you think there are certain problems that human-centered innovation might struggle to solve? See, design thinking is very beautiful in many problems where you want to explore new areas of possibilities. Okay, if that is your objective. So, for example, if your objectivity is how do I reduce cost, say, or how do I improve productivity, you have a science for reducing cost and productivity. No need for you to use design thinking. Okay. But then, if your question is that I want to reduce cost not by reducing manpower, but by enhancing their job roles to a higher level that enables them to be engaged better with the organization. Now you have got a wicked problem to solve. And that is very apt for design thinking because you can't solve it in a logical way. You will have to explore possibilities because you put a lot of constraints in some of these. So many of the problems are apt for design thinking as long as you are willing to explore possibilities and you frame it in a manner where you want to have multiple aspects which never existed in the current state, right? So if I say I want to reduce cost, but obvious, I look at productivity, automation, and then I remove people. But then if your objective is why do I remove people? Means, I need to have I can have a lot of other work to do and enhancement work to do. And that's where design thinking comes in. Is where the wickedness comes in. And therefore it becomes very apt, right? And you need to have some very provocative thinking also, like Elon Musk usually has, can the rocket go up vertically and come down vertically also, and come back to Earth and again come back to the same location where it was uh, left in space. So this kind of provocative elements which are there, of course, design thinking does not solve that because you need to be a specialist in rocket technology for you to do that. But it helps you to question and look at ecosystems which are there, right? Great. So, what next? What next in design thinking? So, you have design thinking, and then we see that there are pros and cons, right? And every system and every technique on innovation that we have has its own limiting factors and pros and cons. There will be no ideal state in a way. We try and use different methods apt for different situations. So, what's next in design thinking? So, let's explore quickly in terms of what's next for design thinking. So, what's the future of design thinking? Where does it really go now from here? So I see two different paths which are prominent, and that's what people, other specialists in design thinking also see, is looking at systems design or looking at solutions which are more systematic in nature. So, for example, when we look at the social problems and other issues which are there, they are basically systems. And rather than just looking at a single element, we need to look at it like a whole element and look at relationships which exist among these different parts of the system. Like if you say poverty resolution, it's a very complex problem. Housing for the poor, it's a very complex problem, right? Traffic rules, it's a complex problem. You need to think through it with various system elements coming inside, and how do they really interact? And this is where systems thinking is very apt. It helps you, developed by J. Forrester way back in 1970s, 80s, where he did a lot of work. And we know what they especially they were working on computers, and the hard disk and the hard drives and the RAMs and others. And that's where system design really came up, but that's very useful because you can really now start working not only in a linear thinking manner. So in the linear thinking manner, like this example here, you say sales are down, you do marketing promotions, order increases, sales are up, backlog, sales are down. So you start thinking, as a cause and output, so there is an output and there's a cost to it, and it goes linearly in a manner. Systems thinking goes in a loop form. There is a feedback mechanism, there are interconnections. So if you look at the systems way of thinking here in a holistic manner, say you do marketing promotions, you increase, right? So you increase marketing promotion. So marketing promotion increase once you approach new customers and new advertisements. So you get new orders, and these orders increase. As these orders increase, sales go up, and then you further increase your marketing promotions because you now have money for you to promote these marketing promotions, and further orders are continuing to increase. So this is like a reinforcing loop. It reinforces by itself, right? But as the order increases, is there something else happening? Negative. Is there a balancing system that is operating? Is there something negative happening? And you will observe that yes, as the order increases, what happens is my backlogs, which are there because I have a capacity constraint. And if I don't work on the capacity, my backlogs are going to rise. And as the backlogs rise, people will find delay in what they have ordered. And as they find delay, they may cancel orders, and therefore the orders itself will decrease. So you have an opposing force acting on the entire system. And that will then further reduce your sales. And as you reduce sales, what's the next obvious action that you would take? Increase the marketing promotions, and your cost for marketing will jump up, and your sales are going down, and costs are jumping up. Your margins will become wafer thin in a way. Now, unless we realize that in reality there are a lot of these kind of dynamic loops which operate, we cannot really solve problems in an innovative manner. So, system thinking looks at this area in detail. You also have what is called as contradiction thinking, wherein there are two opposing needs which come together and they need to be simultaneously there. So when you have a particular action where both positive effect and negative effect simultaneously are working, it's a contradiction. So for example, You want to pursue your master's degree so that you can increase your financial prospects, so which is a positive effect. But you must put in a lot of effort and time and money for you to acquire it. So that's a negative effect for it. Now you see that then the whole ideality is, how do I get a master's degree or a certain kind of qualification that you aspire for with lower effort and with lower cost and lower time effort, especially if you're a working professional. And therefore, both have to come together. And only when we start thinking about solutions where both possibilities have to go simultaneously and both pressures we need to meet simultaneously, we really cannot innovate. So contradiction thinking helps you really do that, right? And there are so many examples that you would see of contradiction thinking and others. So in my view, I think some of the design thinking very apt for a lot of challenge areas, but some areas where they are weaker, you could really look at the future states on systems design. You can look at areas where it looks at contradiction thinking. These are two areas which I see a lot of potential coming in. Right? Great. Any questions? Any questions? Shruti, if you had to choose one problem in the world that could benefit most from human-centered innovation approach, yeah, I think very apt. Benefit from human-centered innovation approach would be, I think, our schooling system. It's very, I discuss this quite often with my co-founder, Yashpal, who has been my co-founder with Iris Innovate. And I think our schooling and education system is something where design thinking would easily benefit, because we haven't developed this system to meet the needs of the consumer, in this case, the student. Okay. It's meant for the parent and the society, not for the student. Okay. And about what they want. So unless we have empathy, we will never be able to develop better systems for us. Unfortunately, that's the foundation of what we have society resides on. And that's a huge issue. Okay? It's not an easy problem to solve. It's a very wicked problem to solve in large number of ways. Right? Any other questions? Any questions before we close? Thank you. Thank you so much for joining in into the innovation community. I hope this was a brief session, but insightful for all of you. Do join in, do post your questions as they come in, any inputs, any questions. And we're posting a lot of material, reading material on applications of design thinking in different areas as we go forward. Thanks so much for your time.